stories making headlines this hour. President Park Geun-hye steps up her diplomatic drive to expand business opportunities for Korean companies in Vietnam during her visit to the Southeast Asian country's economic capital of Ho Chi Minh City. The two Koreas make progress in working out details for resuming operations at their jointly run factory zone in the north, allowing a number of South Koreans to stay at the complex starting today. Plus, a possible exit strategy for a U.S. plan to bomb Syria. President Barack Obama calls Russia's proposal to place Syria's chemical weapons under international control a potential breakthrough. The U.S. officials are skeptical the Assad regime will follow through after an agreement. Well, these stories and more next on Primetime News. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Tuesday, September 10th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am GeunHye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. At last, the 16-year hunt for the hidden fortune of disgraced former President Chun DooHwan may be coming to a close. Yielding to government pressure, Chun, who refused to pay more than $150 million in fines for corruption during his rule in the 1980s, vowed to return the sum to the state. Kim Myung-gil has our top story.
It has been 16 years since Korea's top court ordered former President Chun DooHwan to return over $200 million he amassed illegally during his dictatorship to the state. The former authoritarian president has paid only a quarter of the sum and claimed he has no money left to settle the rest. But after the government's long and drawn-out search for assets supposedly hidden by the disgraced dictator under his relatives' names, his eldest son, Chun Jae-guk, made a public apology and promised that the family will return the remainder to the state.
We sincerely apologize for causing public concern. We are also sorry for being late in resolving this issue, and my father has told us to fully cooperate with the authorities.
The younger Chun rolled out a list of family assets that would be used to pay off the fines. They include the Chun family's real estates, including the former president's whole home, highly valued artworks and stocks. The move comes after state prosecutors had confiscated nearly $83 million worth of assets held by the family. The former dictator's family will divide up over $150 million worth of fines which Chun owes to the state. Since May, the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office has led an investigation into the Chun family to search for assets they said were concealed by the family on behalf of the former president. Kim Myung-gil, Arirang News.
The President Park Geun-hye, on her state visit to Vietnam, continued on with her diplomatic drive to bolster her business presence in the southeastern country on Tuesday.
She paid a visit to Vietnam's largest economic city of Ho Chi Minh, toured a Korean company there, and met with high-ranking city officials calling for support for Korean firms. Our Jeunju, who is traveling with the president, reports on Park's economic push.
Hanoi may be the political capital of Vietnam, but Ho Chi Minh City is the economic center. President Park on Tuesday flew over to the nation's economic capital and held talks with the city's party committee secretary Lee Han-hai and Mayor Lee Hwang-kwan.
특히 그 경제 분야에 있어서 우리 두 나라 간의 그 협력 증진이 양국 국민들의 삶에 크게 기여하고 있다 이런 생각을 했습니다.
President Park called for further support for Korean companies operating in Vietnam, asked city officials to ease regulations for employment of foreign workers and construction, and to provide tax incentives for businesses that invest in the country again. Later in the day, President Park toured the biggest Korean company operating in Ho Chi Minh City called Hanse. Hanse is an apparel firm that makes products for global fashion brands like Gap, Nike, and Uniqlo through original equipment manufacturer or OEM deals. Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs Cho Won-dong told reporters that President Park's trip to the city aimed to address one of Vietnam's most urgent economic issues, the imbalance in its bilateral trade with Korea as imports far exceed exports. Her visit to the company, Cho added, will serve to encourage Korean firms to invest in Vietnam and export products made there to other countries as a way to solve the imbalance in bilateral trade. President Park also met with leaders of Korean businesses operating in that city, including Lotte Mart, Kaesong, and CJ, and listened to the difficulties they face in doing business in Vietnam. Many observers say President Park's sales diplomacy, added with her soft diplomacy in Vietnam, led to a number of tangible results in the economic sector. After wrapping up her 5-day stay here in Vietnam, President Park will be returning to Seoul on Wednesday. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, Hanoi.
In the North's border town of Kaesong, the two Koreas opened a second round of inter-Korean discussions to reach an agreement on just when to resume operations at their jointly run factory park in the north.
The Joint Committee on the Gaeseong Industrial Complex butted heads on a wide range of issues, including ways to globalize the zone, protecting the assets of investors, and ensuring the safety of South Korean workers. If the talks go well, experts say the factories may start running again before the Korean Thanksgiving holiday next week. Meanwhile, beginning this Tuesday, around 30 South Korean workers will start staying overnight at the border town to conduct checkups on the facilities there. U.S. Chief Nuclear Envoy Glyn Davies, who is in Seoul on a 2-day visit, says Washington remains open to dialogue with North Korea.
But only if the North takes tangible steps towards dismantling its nuclear program. Our foreign affairs correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
Washington's top nuclear envoy, Glyn Davies, says that it's not yet time for the heads of the six-party denuclearization talks to return to the negotiating table. Following an hour-long meeting with his South Korean counterpart Cho Tae-yong in Seoul on Tuesday, Davies said that for the talks to resume, North Korea must first work toward fulfilling its obligations.
We need to see some sign that they are sincere about what is the central issue of the six-party process, which is the peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Davies said China's recent proposal for an informal meeting between the six-party member nations would be helpful in gathering academic opinion on North Korea, but stressed the time is not right for the top nuclear negotiators to get together. Beijing had proposed talks among experts and the highest-ranking nuclear officials from the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, on September 18th in Beijing, as part of efforts for a swift resumption of the multilateral dialogue. Seoul and Washington said that the conditions for dialogue have been clearly laid out for the North.
The actions that North Korea must take are clearly outlined in the September 19th joint declaration, in various agreements reached during the six-party talks, and in the UN Security Council resolutions.
The visiting U.S. official stressed that while Washington remains open to dialogue with Pyongyang, the talks will only take place if and when the North reverses its direction towards denuclearization. Davies will meet with officials in Beijing and Tokyo before wrapping up his three-nation visit to Northeast Asia later this week. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
With an apparent thaw in relations between the two Koreas, there's a small return to optimism that the long-stalled six-party dialogue could resume.
The member nations like China and Russia have expressed hope in recent weeks to restart the multilateral talks. Yet the United States and South Korea remain firm that formal negotiations with the North depends on Pyongyang's proven willingness to dismantle its nuclear weapon programs.
Dr. Kim Hyun-wook, professor at Korea National Diplomatic Academy, joins us in the studio now for more on the prospects of the six-party talks. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Do you think it may be a bit premature to talk about six-party talks at this point?
Yes, I think it's still premature because first, the U.S. posture has not changed at all. I mean, the U.S. thinks that there has been no signs of North Korea for a sincerity in dismantling its nuclear program, and a current U.S. policy towards North Korea has not changed. The current U.S. policy is based upon sanctions, and by sanctions, the purpose is to sharpen North Korea's choice. Because North Korea, I don't think North Korea itself know which policy they have to take. I mean, their focus has been, domestic power consolidation. So what the U.S. is thinking is that until North Korea becomes clear about their future policies, the U.S. will not do anything. So I think the U.S. is not ready for a six-party process or its dialogue with North Korea yet.
But nevertheless, there has been efforts, notably from China, to push for the resumption of the six-party talks. What seems to be the reason behind the latest move to reopen the dialogue?
Well, I think there have been a lot of dialogue between China and North Korea. I mean, first time after third nuclear test, China has been, doing a lot of sanctions towards North Korea as part of purposes to tame North Korea's new leader, Kim Jong-un. And now, North Korea is pretty much following China's advices. Maybe China has advised North Korea, hey, you have to first normalize inter-Korean relations. After that, we can help you out for U.S.-North Korea dialogue or six-party process. And once North Korea has done something about that, about the inter-Korean dialogue, I mean, China, might need to do something to help out North Korea more actively.
Well, China has said to the other party members to try to set up at least the conditions for the return to the six-party talks. But do you think even North Korea is ready at this point? What would make them more likely now to give up their nukes than before?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I don't think North Korea is ready for dismantling and giving up their nuclear weapons. Why would they give their nuclear weapons? I mean, their excuses for maintaining nuclear program is that they are threatened by the United States in security terms. But there are many more important purposes that North Korea nuclear program gives to North Korean leader. Most important thing is that it is an important tool to make a provocative external tensions which would be necessary to stabilize and mobilize North Korean people in consolidating Kim Jong-un's power. And also it can be a very important bargaining chip vis-a-vis the United States and South Korea. So having said that, I think there's no way that North Korea would give up its nuclear program, which can be such an important tool for a lot of benefits and purposes of North Korea for now.
And with that being said, there are still strong doubts about North Korea's true intentions behind its peace overtures. They're worried that they could trick them back into negotiating, and this could eventually lead to haggling with it and fruitless talks. Now, what can member nations do to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
The first thing we have to think about is changing North Korean regime characteristics or changing North Korean societal characteristics. In order for that, I think one way we can think about is to induce market economic system into North Korea. I mean, we have tried many things. China tried many attempts. China and North Korea has joint economic project. We have Gaeseong Complex. So all that kind of things, if the numbers of those joint economic projects increases and it becomes more global, and possibly Japan and the U.S. joins, maybe there's more chances that the North Korea society can be changing towards market economic system.
All right. Well, Professor, I think you outlined the beginnings of another solution or another way. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise. Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature, circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report, less than
unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meeting came on the news. We're trying to cover up the South's true intentions.
The United States Senate was set to vote on a bill authorizing military action in Syria this week, but that vote has now been put on hold. An offer by Russia to put the Syrian government's chemical weapons under international control prompted the delay. Our Kim Hyun-bin has more on a possible alternative to the U.S. plan to strike Syria.
The United States says it's going to closely examine Russia's proposal of putting Syria's chemical weapons under international control.
We want to take a hard look at the proposal. We'll obviously discuss the idea with the Russians. And of course, we would welcome a decision and action by Syria to give up its chemical weapons.
In an interview with CNN Monday, President Obama said the Russians' proposal was a potentially positive development.
If we can exhaust these diplomatic efforts and come up with a formula that gives the international community a verifiable, enforceable mechanism to deal with these chemical weapons in Syria, then I'm all for it.
Russia's proposal comes in the context of imminent U.S. military action. The White House says it's important to keep pressure on Syria and give the president the authority he requested. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon plans to urge the Security Council to demand the Syrian government hand over its chemical weapons.
I'm considering urging the Security Council to demand the immediate transfer of Syria's chemical weapons and chemical precursor stocks to places inside Syria where they can be safely stored and destroyed.
Russia's proposal came a matter of hours after U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry emphasized that the only way Syria could sidestep military intervention will be to forfeit all its chemical weapons.
He could turn over every single bit of his chemical weapons to the international community in the next week. Turn it over, all of it, without delay, and allow a full and total accounting for that.
Syria's foreign minister welcomed Russia's proposal to put the country's chemical weapons stockpile under international control, but stopped short of saying explicitly if Syria would carry it out.
I state that the Syrian Arab Republic welcomes the Russian initiative, motivated by the Syrian leadership's concern for the lives of our citizens and the security of our country.
Meanwhile, the Senate has put its vote on authorizing military intervention in Syria on hold in response to Moscow's proposal. Senators were originally set to vote on Wednesday. Kimia, Arirang News.
It's been 1 year since Japan's purchase of a group of islands in the East China Sea escalated tensions between Beijing and Tokyo. Both sides have since stepped up rhetoric and may even set foot on the disputed territory before this year is up. Kim Ji-yeon takes an in-depth look at the dispute over the Senkaku or Diaoyu Islands.
The territorial conflict between China and Japan over a group of islands in the East China Sea, known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China, turned 1 year old on Tuesday. The nationalization of the islands by Japan last year took the conflict to a new level, and neither side is backing down. In fact, the Xi Jinping administration in China seems to be taking a harder line on the issue. The People's Liberation of China deployed around 40,000 Army ground and Air Force troops on Tuesday as part of a military exercise dubbed the Mission Action 2013. China wants Japan to admit that there is a dispute over the islands and to sit down for talks on the matter. But Japan has largely pushed these demands aside. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Monday that the islands have always belonged to Japan. And now, following successive victories in the general elections last year and the upper house elections in July, Abe seems to be using his mandate to toughen his position on the islands. The Abe administration has raised its defense budget for next year, which includes a contingency plan for a potential conflict over the islands, and said it may put troops on the islands to protect them. The question of whether Japanese forces can land on the islands is a sensitive one, since the military is only allowed to engage in self-defense. With both sides stepping up the rhetoric, experts are speculating that China may set foot on the islands this year. While Chinese activists have landed on the islands in the past, there has never been an official attempt by China. However, the Chinese State Bureau of Survey and Mapping has repeatedly stated that it will send officials to the islands by the end of the year. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Tuesday marks the 11th anniversary of World Suicide Prevention Day, a day dedicated to raising awareness and keeping people from taking their own lives. It's an especially poignant day for Korea, which still has the highest suicide rate among OECD nations, a rate that has spiked in the last 10 years among teens. Our Kim Hyun-ji has more.
Lee Jin-ah is a middle school student. The 7th grader loathes the moment she gets her test results back at school. She says she cried many times alone after receiving scores she feels do not reflect her efforts.
My mom would yell at me saying, "What are you going to do with such poor test scores?" She also scolds me for not working hard enough. But I do work hard. Because of this, I always quarrel with my mom over grades.
New data show that 12% of all adolescents in the nation have had suicidal thoughts, driven by feelings of deep sorrow and anger. In 2001, the suicide rate among Koreans aged between 10 and 19 was 3.2 per 100,000 people. But the rate jumped to 5.6 per 100,000 in 2011, a near 1.8-fold increase in just 10 years. The rate of increase was the second fastest among OECD nations, following Chile. While economic hardship is the leading cause among the adult population for suicide, the biggest issues driving adolescents to the brink include academic concerns and family troubles. Less than 10% of teen suicides are linked to depression, a stark difference compared to adults, where depression is often a leading factor. To stem the growing problem among the nation's youth, experts stress that the issue of teen suicides should be approached differently than adult suicides. Kimia, Arirang News.
South Korea and Croatia went head-to-head on the football pitch in their friendly match in Jeonju.
And Stephen Che joins us from the SportsCenter to give us the highlights of the match. Stephen.
Hey guys, as expected, it was a hard-fought battle with physical play by both sides. Both teams wanted to win. The first half set the tone. Getting across the field was a challenge as bodies clashed across the pitch. Croatia pressed the attack, putting 2 of 5 shots on goal, while the ROK managed 6 shots, only 1 on target. On to the second half. Despite the ROK defense holding on, Croatia's Vida scored a header in the 63rd minute. And moments later, the visiting team struck again with another cross and header, make that 2-0. South Korea's offense pushed for a redemption goal and got one, but the match ended just like that, 2-1 Croatia. Shifting to weightlifting, a team of South Korean weightlifters arrived in North Korea on Tuesday, the first time in over a decade that the two Koreas will have engaged in sports diplomacy. They're there to take part in the week-long Asian Cup and Inter-Club Weightlifting Championship, which opens on Wednesday upon invitation by the North. Pyongyang has agreed to allow the South Korean flag and national anthem to be played should a medal be won by an athlete from the South. And coming home, it's time to talk about Tuesday's top KBO matchup. The SK Wyverns and the Kia Tigers battled it out in Kunsan. SK looking for their 4th straight win. Kia trying to come back from 4 straight losses. Now on to the first, the Wyverns Kim Gang-min doubles to bring 2 home, 2-0 SK. Now we go to the second, it's the Tigers, Kim Joo-hyun. He's going to hit this one over the wall, 2-run shot to left, scores level 2-2. Now SK adds 1 in the 4th, but Kia ties it up in the 7th. All that before Jo In-sung hits a solo homer in the 8th. Wyverns up 4-3, and the Wyverns go on to win this one 5-3. And looking at the scores from across the league, NC defeats Lotte 3-2, while Tusan and LG and Samsung and Nexon had their games canceled. That does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
Time to go over to our Kim Bo-kyung, who's standing by at the Weather Center. Hello, Bo-kyung.
Hello, Sean and Chi-hye. We're getting some autumn rain here in Seoul.
Yes, which will hopefully take care of the heat once and for all.
Yes, after a rainy week, the temperatures should drop even further. Let's take a look at our satellite map for the details. The nation is under the influence of a low pressure front from the west, which is why we're seeing cloudy skies with rain throughout the nation. Moving on, there's more rain in the forecast until tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow morning, there should be heavy rain in the west coast regions, so please please be careful on your way to work. Average daytime high should reach 28 degrees with a low of 18. Moving on to tomorrow's forecast, Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju should have a rainy morning hitting the mid-20s. Meanwhile, Busan should have a cloudy day with a daytime high of 27. Taking a look at other regions, showers are expected in Daejeon from later tonight to tomorrow afternoon with a daytime high of 23 degrees. Meanwhile, Jeju gets up to 28 and Mount Kumgang to 16. Well, that's all for now, but join me for another update after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm GeunHye in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.